the meeting for our coordinator to watch later.
Okay. There we go.
I submitted a request to you,
Recording in progress.
but for some reason last time didn't come through, so I'm also recording on my side to be safe.
Okay.
Yeah, wonderful. So are we expecting someone else to join us, or
Not from my side, I don't think.
all right, not from
Shelby
my
has
side.
to teach.
Okay, yep. So if you can just sort of walk me through the protocol or the document and oh, but by the way, before we get started, I also want to make sure that the underlying mechanism in terms of the funding sort of thing to straight this out. We do have some funding, uh, but I mean, from either from our home institute, from the intramural funding, the grant, and also I still have some funding left over from the SEER network. But I think we need to re-budget or do this kind of thing. Do you want to have a centralized processing, or you think we can just process everything in Taiwan instead of send this specimen to you?
So there's good news and pretty good news. There's no bad news actually.
Okay.
Well, first, actually, have you heard whether any of the SEER activities were affected by all the Hopkins cuts this week?
I'm not sure I know the detail.
Okay. So the good news is that Shelby, our colleague Mark Johnson, and I have private donor support for pretty significant amount of our air and wastewater work. So it's easy for us to provide, testing materials, the supplies, the equipment, uh, for, like a 3 to 6 month pilot to see if it works. If there's some modest amount of staff time that's needed, we can see about supporting that as well. Typically, for most of our sites, the changing the air sampling is so de minimis that like no one asks for money because it's like 5 minutes a week. If you're doing the testing like in a Cephia Gene Expert, there's one of our sites where we're looking to get some. The supplies are easy because we can just buy boxes of supplies. Um, we are looking to get a small amount of staff support for someone at one of the sites who just is like, we really want to recover something for the people who are running the Gene Expert. That entails a lot of paperwork. It's not a problem. We can do it, but it's a lot of paperwork. So in terms of like the air samplers, the air sampling supplies, the Cephia Gene Expert supplies, that's all really easy. Uh, Staff time is doable. It's just a little harder. But again, the amount of staff time is usually really, really small.
Mm-hmm.
So we would want it to be like an actual accounting of what's required, not, it's not like 25% of a person. It just doesn't take that much time.
Okay. So, uh, in terms of the specimen, do you want to centralize, like, send the specimen back to your lab, or should we just process everything here? Because you mentioned the Cepheid testing, but are we doing some other type of like deep sequencing type approach to like multi organism in our?
Yeah, so that's one of the things we'll need to figure out. So we can do either way. So what we've been doing is so for most of our cartridges, let's see, I have one here. So this is the aerosol sense cartridge. Um, we're actually moving away from the aerosol sense, but it illustrates nicely the idea. So you have two different substrates in the cartridge. And so we'll typically process them independently. Like one might go to a gene expert and one might go into sequencing, or one might go to the gene expert and one might go to an H5 PCR. So we sort of separate the samples typically into multiple assays. which assays we use is sort of dependent on the site and what they're hoping to get out of it. If one of the first questions is just overcoming skepticism that this idea works, something like the Gene Expert works really nicely because you see, oh my gosh, there actually is SARS-CoV-2, and RSV and influenza in the air. If the goal is to look for things that are a bit more expansive, then sequencing is possible. What we've been doing for sequencing is a sequence-independent single primer amplification, a CISPA assay. I'm not in love with the assay. I think we'll be able to make it better in the next year or so. We're actively working on that. But it can work. We've published on it, especially if you are having like an outbreak of something where you have multiple people showing up with it. So like in a preschool, for example, we had a lot of influenza C virus. We were able to see it because CISPA is relatively unbiased. Like we wouldn't have otherwise thought of testing for it. But we were also only able to see it because there was probably a lot of ICV genetic material in the air. CISPA is not as sensitive as we would like. Oxford Nanopore, which is the platform that we are preferring for all of our sequencing, because it's field deployable, which is where we want to get to eventually, just released a new kit that they purport. I think it's based on the. I'm not sure how familiar you are with these things, but there's a protocol called Rapid Smart 9N, Smart 9N, that Nick Coleman and Josh Quick developed. I think this is a kitted version of that. When we tried it using Josh and Nick's protocol, we didn't have the greatest luck, but we're still trying this Oxford Nanopore one. And then we want to try the CRAS protocol that was talked about at the Hopkins, the EAB a few weeks ago, as a way of doing targeted enrichment. Generally speaking, we don't like the targeted enrichment sequencing because it's really time consuming and laborious. And so it's just not, the juice isn't worth the squeeze for most. But if this one really is a lot easier, then it's worth giving a shot too.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you prefer decentralized approach. So once you have an established protocol, we can do the same thing on our side. I think it's reasonable because save some shipping, because for shipping we also need lots of documentation, and
Yes.
we've done that because we still are regularly sending specimen to Hopkins. But I think if we can process something under the same protocol, that'll be good. We can do that. In terms of the the manpower, we do have some, because we are still working with people at Hopkins. We have the same protocol, although here we have to modify a little bit. Because of the environment, because of the staffing are different. But I think that we have been through so many processes in the past, so we could just take a look at your protocol and revise, no matter it's for the again the environment issue I mentioned, or the requirement from the the ethics committee. So having said that, I think we have some supporting manpower to help us to either to start the documentation processing, and then I think that the sample collection is easier. Just the later part, whether we are processing this kind of specimen on our side or sending to you, sounds like if we are processing these, maybe we need to have like a minimum, the level of training, so that we can make sure that we are on the same page as well. So what's the next step you recommend for us to start?
Well, let me ask a question first. So I think in our last call, you said there was some air sampling that you thought was good. First of all, you said here a couple of times. Are you back in Taiwan now, or are you in Michigan still?
No, I'm still in Michigan. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You just said here. I didn't know
Yeah,
if you were
but
back.
because literally I'm still with them. We have regular
Yeah.
meeting like every 2 days. So I'm I'm with them all the time. But physically I'm here. But the
Okay.
communication between my lab, my team, and even the communication between the administrator are smooth. There's no issue. We can communicate in real time.
I know how it goes. I don't know if we mentioned this last time, but Shelby and I spend a significant amount of time in Australia, and it's the same idea. I still say, yeah, here in Wisconsin, and I'm halfway around the world. So yeah, I get it. Um, Last time we chatted, you mentioned that there may have been some air sampling that had either been underway or is underway. Were you able to get any more information about what that is? Because we don't want to overlap with what's already in place.
They already finished a project a couple of years ago, and they already published their study, and there is no competing or no study in parallel currently going on in our home institute.
What was the sort of vibe from the study? Because sometimes when people have done air sampling studies, they've been kind of underwhelmed with what they learned. How did they feel coming out of that study?
Well, they collect specimen from the pediatric clinic. Uh, Again, the environment here is so different. So the clinic is basically a big, like you have hallway, you have lots of people, over there, and they have like three or at least two clinic is for the infectious disease, uh, going on at the same time every like including mornings and afternoons. So according to their result, which I haven't really read them through, but according to the communication, they successfully found the mycoplasma in that area, which is encouraging because mycoplasma is always problematic for kids, and it's not easy because the symptoms are vague. Sometimes the kids will come up with the GI symptoms, and then the pneumonia will also be very difficult to find in the X-ray. So I think that the result is encouraging. And the reason they stopped doing this is because, again, this is we are still serving lots of clinical demands. This is although the design for this institute is a research institute, but we have very large volume. So for researchers who are interested, they can just apply for grant off and on. So this is still like under research, but not like the clinical standard of practice. So they've done that, and they also identify some authors, researchers for us to approach. I can outreach to them to see if they're still interested in doing so. So if that's the case, we can have a meeting together to see what they have, because they have experience, they know how to set it up, and all these like ethical committee kind of issue. Because I don't think that would be a problem, but if I outreach to them, that I think that will make things easier as well. Depends on how different our protocol will be. Yeah.
Okay, so that tells me two very important things from what you just mentioned. So one was that because mycoplasma was something that they were interested in, a question that would be good to know the answer to is whether the institute has a biofire. Do you know if they happen to have one?
I think we do have one. Yeah.
Okay. So, what I would potentially recommend then as like a starting point would be to collect air and then again run the biofire respiratory and GI panels on the air samples. So that's 44 pathogens total. That is especially nice here because Mycoplasma pneumoniae is one of the pathogens that is on the biofire panel. So if they've already seen that, this would help provide some continuity with what was done before, but then also expand to a wide variety of other pathogens that would potentially be of interest. We just had a situation yesterday, actually, where a very, very clean setting where there's virtually no respiratory pathogens. It's an exceptional setting. There's a lot of quarantine going in and everything. It's a big old thing. But they had someone with OC43, and they only saw it because it was, biofire positive. It was Cepheid negative. So for a group that has some experience and has had a positive vibe on doing this before, maybe seeing about starting with biofire testing would make some sense, and we could look to do like a 3 to 6 month pilot of some frequency, between probably a couple times a week, change the air sample, test it on biofire, and then try to put together. Unfortunately, Shelby has the most recent report cards, but what amounts to like a heat map over time that basically would have 44 rows, and then you have the dates, and then you basically say, well, this is what we saw, and then you look at the end of that and you say, is there anything here we didn't expect? If at the end of it all you find is things that you already expected or intuited based on what the clinical presentation was and what some of the testing was, then maybe that is not going to be a lot of value. Maybe there is value in sequencing, but that would be, a phase 2 or something like that. What our experience has been, and again, I don't know if it's going to generalize, but in our emergency departments deploys, we've seen that oftentimes the air is a leading indicator of what they then see in the individual testing. So, like, we picked up the very beginning of the influenza season before there was much. I mean, we knew it was coming, right? But it was earlier by a couple of weeks than the real beginning of the increase in clinical cases. And so, if the biofire were to be able to see that, is there? So, when I think about Taiwan, I think about it being, pretty mild climate-wise, right? So, like, when is the flu season in Taiwan?
Flu season, yeah, it's a little bit late because as you mentioned, it's a relatively mild weather. So it's always start like in late December and it will peak in January and especially after the Lunar New Year. Because Lunar New Year is like Christmas here, so everyone is going home, so spreading the
Right.
virus. And then for this year is especially serious because maybe part of the reason is people stop getting flu shots, and then out of blue, this season is really bad. That all the ED are really overcrowded. So, but to be honest, the last year is also different because we before the pandemic, we do have like a summer flu every 4 or 3 years. But after the pandemic, everything is different. There are flus, during the summer, but the past winter is really serious. But now it's getting down a little bit, I would say. Yep.
Okay, so what we would want to do then, if my expectation is that typically for our overseas collaborations, especially ones that are starting from a place where there's some experience but not a ton, you're typically looking at like a 3 to 5 month lead process just to get all the meetings, get everyone on board, get everyone ready, which would mean that we might be ready by like the summer or so to actually start doing some of the work and testing if things are good. Does that jibe with kind of your experience? Or do you think it takes more time than that or less time? Like, what would you be thinking in terms of timing?
Yeah, if we are aiming to start for the next full season, I think we have plenty of time because
Okay.
yeah, as I mentioned, maybe even for the testing periods, if we can, because the ethical community issue, I'm pretty much sure these should be not directly related to human subject research, but even we want to have a waiver, I think we should just start earlier, and then if say we have some kind of waiver, then all these like pilot study can be published without any kind of consideration concern. So I think that's the first thing maybe we want to do, and then after the committee pass everything, we can just try to finalize the protocol and get everyone trained on the same page, the same fashion to collect specimen, and then figure out whether the biofire we have the kids and everything's is the same. So I think the timing is good enough for us to aiming for the next season. Although again, as I mentioned, we might have some surprising pathogen coming out in the summer. Um, on the other hand, we are also expecting to see some enterovirus in the summer because here, these kind of virus are really serious. Again, both in the in I'm trying to say in different type of hospitals because we are the other thing I think we are aiming to do here is because we have like 6 branches, island-wide, so collect this specimen should be easy for us, and that would be also interesting to see the different pattern in different kind of hospitals.
Yeah, from our year-round testing in some sites, we definitely see rhinoentero year-round. We see SARS-CoV-2 and rhinoentero year-round, and then everything else pretty much has a seasonal pattern. And that's one of the reasons why I was asking about timing. So, like, if the two reasons to think about starting before the flu season, if the timing works out, is still seeing rhino, entero, and SARS-CoV-2 is, and seeing that they are main drivers of illness, even when there's not a lot of other, respiratory stuff around, is itself kind of interesting. And then the second is basically to be prepared in case there was an exotic, whether it was H5 or something else.
Okay, sounds good. So sounds like we will start lots of work to do, right? So
Yeah. So I think the next step might be to then schedule a call with some of your colleagues. And did I show you the new small air sampler last time? Did Shalbert show that? I don't remember.
on the slides, but not.
Yeah, so we have 2 air samplers. Give me one second. Let me go grab them. I think I have one in the next room. Right. So this is probably the air sampler we want to use. It's called an InBio Apollo. When I said that it's really easy to change, what I mean is that you have a filter here that has an electrostatic, it's just an electrostatic filter. This was originally designed to capture allergens. We may, by later this year, have a more efficient filter, but to change it, literally, all you have to do is this one, we just 3D printed this one, so it doesn't have a barcode on it, but we would have a barcoded identifier that would just be a sticker on this, that all of these would be sort of pre-made where you have the filter in these little plastic casings. The plastic casings we're 3D printing right now. We're probably going to have them injection molded by the end of the year. And you basically just put it in and turn it on. So there's really almost nothing to the notion of changing the cartridges. The biggest challenge we're having now, and one that we'll probably have solved by the time this project goes forward, is that the actual filter, if I take it out, has this plastic backing, and we need to basically get the filtery bits detached from the plastic. So the plastic is kind of glued to the filter, and that's really inconvenient. So we're going to have probably a tool that's going to cut this out, and then we would have the equivalent. I'm not sure if you can see, but there's like 4 quadrants here.
Mm-hmm.
We'll probably have something which will basically turn that into 4 independent samples that could be used for 4 independent assays. That's the idea. So we'll probably use a sampler like this. One of the questions to think about for the next call is going to be, there are 6 hospitals. These samplers are like dirt cheap, and these cartridges are dirt cheap. The BioFire is the major expense. So each BioFire kit with US pricing is something like $130. But like this is $10, and this thing is $500. So it's really not very expensive. Just figuring out what the right balance is between number of sites, number of samplers per sites, how often to change the cartridges, because if you change it every day, that's a lot more testing than if you change it twice a week or once a week. And basically just dialing in what the right design looks like, so that we get the right kind of information out. And I think that's going to be the main conversation in terms of operational challenges, because everything else, changing the cartridges, as I just said, dead easy. The elution is going to be a solved problem. With all of our air sampling things, the genetic material just gets stuck to the filter, and so it's basically just rinse it off, and then you process it through whatever molecular assay we're going to use. So I think it should be pretty straightforward.
I want to just before I let you go, last 2 minutes, if you can just send me some material, because I also want to recruit more investigator on our side. That will make things easier. Say people in the south, maybe like they have, they know their environment better, so they know where to set up the things. So if you can send me a couple of slides, I can present in front of my research, committee or research meetings in the Home Institute back in Taiwan, and then we can recruit more investigators that can contribute to some ideas and operational type of approach to us.
Terrific. Let me just make a note, because Shelby is the one who's in charge. Each of us is in charge of a different thing. That's one of Shelby's things. So,
okay.
Shelby, can you send information? Okay, perfect. All right, excellent.
All right, so for next meeting, because if we are using the same, like Friday morning, because one of my lead coordinators, she deliver lecture during the evening, so we have to figure out other time. So we can do it via email.
Yeah, we can find times. We also, Shelby and I work a lot, so like depending on what the time zones are, we can do meetings at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, our time, if that's more convenient for morning in Taiwan.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, great. Thanks, Gipsy. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now.